beginning right now. And just so as conversations and innovations are discussed or might be discussed in this roundtable, we can utilize this as a resource to other parishes that might not have had an opportunity to come onto this. We do have a lot of smaller parishes in which senior wardens and there's no priest there, and it's helpful to be able to capture resources, and so if you do have any concern about that, just raise your hand. We can obviously edit pieces of it if things do become personal. So I want to open us in prayer, and then we'll begin with the conversation at hand. We have about an hour, so before I think we move on to the next topic of conversation. So the Lord be with you. Lord God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all the graces that you offer to us and the little things in our lives, for the laughter of children or friendships, for the chance for us to be together today and in this way, even though it's not exactly what we would prefer in our lives to be separated. We thank you that that you make things good. Lord, bless this conversation. Help it to be fruitful to the people who are here and to those who are questioning and seeking out what mission and outreach looks like in this time that we are living in. Bless our conversations, guide them, and in all things help us to be focused on your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Well, the purpose of this is to offer space for folks to share what we're doing, and the topic of this conversation obviously is mission and outreach. We'll throughout the day we'll be having other conversations, worship, which begins at 11. Formation, we'll have some transition conversations tomorrow, and a couple others throughout the day. But the opportunity right now is for us to begin to share what we're doing, how we're doing it, and then to be able to ask questions that might be on the hearts of your communities. There's really this is not intended to be sort of information setting, although there are a number of resources that we can point each other to as we go along. So I'd like to open the floor to anybody who'd like to have questions, concerns, comments, anything like that.
Hey, I just wanted to say I'm primarily listening in for what other folks are doing. St. Timothy's is not focusing on outreach and mission right now. We're just making efforts to stay in community with one another, and which is a good thing, but it concerns me that there aren't, I don't know how to do outreach and mission right now. So so I'm on this call to listen in, really.
Well, let me ask you a question. What's and we'll get to you in a second, Mary. I'm Mary Balfour, sorry. So what were some of the mission and outreach engagements that are primary to St. Timothy's?
There were actually quite a few, and all very what I would call mercy oriented. offering comforting things to people, such as, and mostly dependent upon an individual in the parish and what their, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but what their kind of pet project. Providing clothing for Three Rivers Behavioral Health, because one of my parishioners is a nurse there. Providing blankets for dialysis patients who get cold, poor dialysis patients who get very cold during treatment. So we have a Wednesday group of people interested in providing items for different organizations, and so they would come together and knit or sew or collect things to give to people. And it seemed dependent upon coming together to do that and then going out to places to distribute. And so with the isolation that is imposed upon us now, those things have halted.
So the question, would be how to maintain or engage in your ministry contexts, or not your ministry context, but your these projects in the midst of in the midst of what's going on, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we get back to that. Mary Balfour, do you have some?
I was just going to say two things that we've done that may be helpful to Alice or anybody else. So I started worrying about these Easter lilies very early on. It's funny what you worry about. Like, why am I worried about Easter lilies? But I did, because I didn't want to have a church full of Easter lilies that can't go anywhere afterwards, right? I can't deliver them to anybody. And so one thing we did was we've encouraged people to still give money to the Easter fund, the Easter flower fund or music fund, whatever it may be. And we're going to give all that money to Greater Greenwood United Ministries. So maybe pick one of those places that you're working with and say, we're going to support you. And we're still going to put all their names in the bulletin. We're still going to, all that. But there's no reason to have a bunch of Easter lilies that can't be reused. So that's one thing. And then I had my outreach committee just call all the agencies that we work with and we support, just for nothing, even if I can't do anything for them right now, just for them to know we're thinking about them and we're praying about them. And I put them all on our prayer list so that they're getting, just as much love as they can from us. Some of them have asked for money, and if we can do that, we will. But we're struggling like everybody else to make sure everything gets online. We get our, and I will say the people of Resurrection have been fabulous about sending their money in and their pledges in and doing it online. But I have a rector's discretionary, so if somebody needs $250, I can do that. I think outreach wise for us, what we're seeing the most of is people losing their jobs and not being able to pay their rent. And so I'm glad for that rector's discretionary fund right now, because I've got some parishioners that are going to really, and if this keeps going on, are going to need that longer and longer. So anyway, the Easter flower thing was something I really wanted to say to y'all, because I thought that was a good way to still honor people, but help an outreach group.
Thank you, Mary Balfour. That's really helpful.
So one question, how are you preparing, engaging, taking census or connecting with folks that are sort of on that ledge, Mary Balfour, maybe your most vulnerable folks that are about to have that sort of transition to unemployment, or
and members of my parish?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a piece to that. I'm sure you have a wider net within the community as
Yeah.
well. So,
Uh,
do you have some systems that you've put in place to kind of help?
yeah,
You
because
know.
it's hard to come to someone and say, I can't pay my rent this month.
Mhm.
It's extremely hard for parishioners. Now, we have a couple of college students that I just know in my mind I need to check on,
Mhm.
because they work in the service industry or whatever. And so I've tried to make it where they did not have to come to me, that I could ask them, where are you? What do you need? And I've also tried to come up with some creative things for them to do for the church that we can pay them, like getting the Zoom stuff all ready for Easter. I don't have the time to do that right now, and they might. We have two college students that both lost their jobs, and they know a lot more about technology than I do. And so, sort of employing them for on a temporary basis, $100 to do this project or $100 to do that project. One in particular, like, I want everybody to email us a little video of what they do on Easter morning, whether it's like chalking the outside of their house or, doing gymnastics in the yard or whatever. And then I need somebody to make that a video. I don't have time to do that. And so these college kids that are members of our church, that might be a good thing for them to do. Now, the older people, I mean, we only have 200 members, so it's pretty easy for me to check on them and say, do you need the church to step up in this way? And we want to. We're happy to do it. Taking that ask away from them, I think, feels right, instead of them having to come to us. I would have a hard time going to the church and saying, I need money, I need to pay my rent, I don't know how to do that. So if I can make that offer to them, I want to do that. And then there are some that are just going to have to come to me because I don't know, what their circumstances are. But I've also had a lot of parishioners come and say, I know there are going to be people that lose their jobs, or do you have a fund set up for that? And I do. The rector's discretionary. I hope that helps.
Is anybody doing something that using some way to track folks? As conversations are going or anything like that?
This is Judy, and we're using Zoom an awful lot at our church for meetings.
Right.
And one of the things with and our vestry is calling everybody. They've divided up the names. They're calling everybody and checking in. We also have neighborhood groups with a neighborhood leader, and they're a good source of checking with their folks too. I'm interested in homeless people used to come to the church for things. The church is closed. There's a sign on the door, call us this number if you need us, but we're not hearing from them. How do we find the homeless and help them?
Judy, will you share with everybody what church you go to?
I'm at Holy Trinity in Clemson.
Okay.
Well, this is Dorian Delper. I'm at Trinity Cathedral. From what the mayor and the governor have said, some of the services that we provide are homeless, our homeless community still fall under the essential. Because of the stay-at-home order we have in the city, even there's a whole debate about that, but we did see a reduction, and we do a breakfast on Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. We have seen a reduction in people coming. My guess is that's what it appears to me is that many of the working poor who do come are honoring the stay-at-home kind of shelter in place, if you will, while the true homeless are still coming. So where we normally have 150, 175 with the first round of restrictions, we went down to about 120, 130. And then this past Sunday, we're down about 80, 90. So we're hitting half, basically. But what we're doing in the midst of that breakfast is, every Sunday I tell them this is considered essential. Unless they tell me to shut it down, we're just still going to have breakfast, spread the word, tell everybody. And then when they line up, it's only to go, it's outside. We limit our number of volunteers, where we normally have 12 to 20 people volunteering. We only have 6 to 8. Everybody maintains the 6 feet of distance. We set up the line so that there's distance between all of our volunteers. Take the food outside. We have tables set up to hand food out and coffee, and ask our guests and friends to honor, comply with the ordinances that the city and state have asked us, about social distancing, and they've been very grateful. They've been very helpful, and it's all worked really well. Other ways to stay in contact, some of it just has to be word of mouth is what we've found sometimes. I'm letting the shelters know, hey, we're still doing breakfast. The other service providers who do meals, we're just kind of communicating through United Way, saying these are the things that are still happening. Please let your guests, your clientele know. And some of it's just word of mouth is what we found. So that's our context. I don't know how that translates to Clemson or another place. We've also, outside of that, we've had to kind of look at some things are just shut down and just can't happen. So ordering of priorities around our mission and outreach, as others have mentioned, being in contact with those who, with the different service providers and ministries we partner with, to hear about their needs. The 3 that we're focusing on is our Sunday breakfast, Homeless No More, here in Columbia, that there's a shelter for families at different stages, but providing for financial, sharing their Amazon wish list with parishioners, and providing those sorts of support for them at a distance. And then W.A. Perry's a middle school nearby that we have a partnership with, and we clearly kids aren't at school, we can't do the after school programs, but we provide backpacks of food for the kids. And so when we know that the kids have to come by the school to pick up packets of schoolwork, we pack so we did 2 weeks worth of food a couple weeks ago when we knew they were coming. And then when they extended another month to school closure, we went ahead and packed for a month so that the families could pick up when they pick up their school packets. Because many of these families don't have internet access and stuff. So they're actually coming to the schools to pick up the packets that they need for to do the schoolwork. And so that those boxes or larger bags of food are there so they can have them for the whole month, trying to coordinate with the school in that way. So there's still ways we're trying to be creative in how we maintain contact with ministries to still provide for the most vulnerable, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. Trying to be creative.
Right.
Sounds really good. Our shelter in the nearby town does not let anyone in because they can't quarantine anyone. They have no space. So that's another problem. Our daily bread, they serve the meals at lunchtime. They're now making sack lunches for people to come and pick up. Mm-hmm. But thank you.
Judy, what's been your with the primary engagement with homeless folks in Clemson from Holy Trinity?
Well, normally when they stop in, Mother Sue's works with them a little bit, but we have Clemson Community Care, which they can go over there and get food. That's open daily till like 2 p.m. The preachers, priests, ministers in church get to in the town of Clemson get together and discuss too how to handle all this. But basically we had the resources of the homeless shelter, Clemson Community Care, our daily bread for food, and these things are now so limited that I'm almost wondering if, since our buses run and they're free, if that's the best way to reach the homeless and say, call this number, you can get food here.
Well, one interesting idea, particularly in a town like Clemson, that that has a good transit system, and yet is not super complex like a Columbia or Greenville. It would be, I wonder if you could work with the transit authority. Maybe y'all could stock food on the transit bus, or think about ways of, you know, where you can keep supplies, emergency supplies, and things like that in the most accessible places. You know, Clemson Community Care, I'm sure, is one of those. But I wonder, just thinking outside the box, like what sort of engagement could you have with the city and the transit authority there to be able to maximize the connection if they're not coming to Holy Trinity anymore.
Yeah, that's really, really a good idea. I think the thing is to get with the vestry and talk about how do we set it up and get it done.
Yeah, Our Savior in Rock Hill has like a little roadside pantries that they stock. They're like the lending libraries kind of thing, you know, where people can come by and grab a book and leave a book and things like that. I wonder if the transit authority would let y'all stock on buses, or maybe y'all do something like that on, you know, in the physical plant, you know, just along the roadside where the parking lot is, you know, creating a come and get it as you need it sort of thing.
Now, that might be the easiest, and
that certainly would.
spread by word of mouth.
Yeah. I'd be interested in seeing how y'all develop relationships with the transit folks or with the government to see. It might be worth just asking where they, you know, where they noticed some of the homeless population in Clemson are going, and how best to engage with them. That Columbia Community Care, I'm sure, has a lot of data too.
Thanks. Good idea.
Mm-hmm. Paula, what are some of the things that y'all are engaging in at Advent?
Well, I'm actually covering this call for Laura Bachnight, who is heads up our outreach. Right now, she and a couple of other folks are packing lunches for one of the public schools since they only provided meals this week through Tuesday. So we were able to provide meals for the next 3 days. And so she is packing up those bags and has made contact with the folks that we have both at the school and at the community center, and those will be delivered today. And so we're working in coordination with them, since they know the places to take the food and the best ways to get those distributed. Some of the places we usually go are closed, obviously, but they were able to find some places that would be appropriate to make those drop-offs today. That's one of the big things we're doing.
So is this a continuance of a relationship you already have with the school systems and community centers and things like that? Or have you all had to develop them?
No, this is very much building on the relationship that we have with Mary H. Wright, which is an elementary school half a mile from the church that we work with and have developed a very, very strong relationship with there. So those relationships were already in place, which made doing this, there was a trust relationship. Laura knew who to call, and the contacts were already very much in place.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Do y'all have any contact with places like Epiphany or anything like that might be good intake, you know, or ministry opportunity sort of on the ground connection?
We do have a few contacts there, and I just made a note to myself. I'll reach out to them and see what they're doing and how we can maybe coordinate with them as well. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, they have such a a strong community presence in that part of town. I know that they're kind of hunkering down because they have a much older population. And so I wonder if the people of Epiphany, or even the neighborhood around Epiphany, there's some identifiable needs that that churches, either the Advent or the Piedmont Convocation might be able to engage in.
That's a good idea. Mary H. Wright, the school that we work with, is walking distance from Epiphany, so there is some overlap there. So it would be a good way to connect and work with them.
Are y'all finding any challenges? Anything that this group might be able to group think with you, or y'all feel like yeah? So are y'all prioritizing? I know y'all have a lot of outreach. Are y'all prioritizing and doing what you can? How's that kind of worked? Where have you found maybe challenges or good systems of prioritizing?
We are responding as we become aware of the issues. We've got contacts with Total Ministry, which is our agency that does the major food distribution in town. So we've got church members who are on that board, so we've been able to connect with them and keep aware of what their pressing needs are and make those needs known and respond as we can. One of the interesting things that is going on right now, we've got some of the women in our church who sew, and they found out that Total needed masks for their volunteers. So we've got some of the women in the church who are able to sew the mask and get those over to Total. Those will actually be picked up this morning, so that their volunteers who are still working, passing out the food to folks, will have a little additional protection there. So it's more as we become aware, we're connecting with folks.
Cool. Sue, how about for you? What church are you connected with? Sue, you there?
She's muted. Just hard to tell.
Yeah. Hey, Sue, are you there? Well, Sue, just know if you have any, Alice just said, who's taking masks? I missed that part of the conversation. Paula was talking about the masks up in Greenville. There was a community center that they use. Go ahead, Paula.
Yes, in Spartanburg, the Total Ministry agency is the agency that distributes its primary contact for food distribution and other financial assistance. They are still functioning, and their volunteers had a need for masks. So some of the folks in our church sewed those, and we're taking those over this morning for distribution there.
Does anybody know if anyone in Columbia is taking masks, and if there are specifications on how to make them, sanitation requirements, anything like that?
Hospitals are not taking them thus far. They're not allowing, at least I know Lexington's not, that's where my wife works. They're starting to run low. They've said they may at some point soon, but they're not yet. Victoria Fleischer, though, Scott Fleischer's wife, has been part of a group that's been making masks, and I think most of their donations are going to doctors' offices and other healthcare providers outside of hospitals, because those places have a little more leeway, and most of the official N95 masks and other stuff is being directed to the hospitals. So it's going to be harder for the doctor's offices right now to get them. And so I've connected with Victoria through social media. I don't, but you could contact Scott at St. John's, and probably he can get you in touch with her and what they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We can't hear you, Jimmy.
Sue just sent a chat. She's from Good Shepherd Greer. They're working with the community center trying to increase our usual food donations for the food bank. Also, Greer Relief is asking for money for rent, etc., for unemployed. We may use our Lilly money for that. Okay. Is that the typical way that I know in some communities, like North Augusta, for instance, they have a one sort of centralized funding source, things like that. Is that what happens in Greer? that the Greer community, excuse me, the Greer Community Ministries sort of do all the direct ministry. Is that the case, or do y'all also, are there multiple outlets? See. So while we're asking for that, Alan had a couple. He just got off Episcopal Relief and Development call, right?
Yeah. Sorry, there's argument over homework in the other room. Yeah, I was on a call with Episcopal Relief and Development. I'm their chaplain for their staff this week, which means I get to sit on staff meeting calls. So a couple of things from them. One is, if y'all are still doing or have started particular outreach, food ministry or whatever, if you would go to the Episcopal Asset Map and update that. The Episcopal Asset Map is episcopalassetmap.org. It's also what we use. I'll share the link in the chat. It's what we use as a diocese for our church finder. And so, number one, it's a good thing to keep updated, just so when people are searching for churches through our website, they find you. But ERD is using that to help point people to resources in communities. And so we're trying to get the word out for folks to update with anything that's going on that's new there.
And I think too, that helps in a local context. If you have people in neighboring towns, things like that, and you're looking for specific resourcing, some of our other churches may very well have be able to accomplish some of the needs that you're identifying in your own community, and so you can find that as a resource for your own parish by looking at the assets of other parishes.
And so you go to that link, and then you can search for your parish by name or location or whatever, and then there's a place to make changes. And so what that'll do is you'll put in, we started a widget ministry. That'll come up to me, and then there's one other map administrator in the diocese. We'll approve it, and then it'll be live on the site. And there's other, those are good things to do. If you change your worship times, if you do whatever, right now, everyone knows that there is no worship. But when things are back to whatever they're getting back to, Alice just asked what a widget ministry is. I'm hoping St. Timothy starts one of those so we can tell the world what a widget ministry is. But the Episcopal Asset Map is just a good resource. It's what the Episcopal Church more broadly is starting to use as their church finder app. So if people go to the Episcopal Church website and then are looking for a church, that's where they'll find you. Another thing from ERD, Jimmy, did you mention Friday's webinar that ERD is putting on? Okay. This is on our webinar page on our website, and on the diocesan calendar, but ERD is doing a asset-based response in COVID-19 webinar Friday afternoon at 3:00, where they're having someone whose name escapes me at the moment come in and talk about using an asset-based response. What are the needs and gifts and resources in our community that can help our community. So that'll be Friday at 3:00. Registration information, all of that is on our website.
Well, we're beginning to run out of time. I think this is set for 45 minutes, not an hour. But are there any other comments, concerns? Sue mentioned that that the ministry is mainly points towards seniors. I think the context of my question was whether or not that this is the central point of contact for Greer, and that idea about that would be to if it is or not, but to look at the needs that are coming, which you are identifying as food donations and some funding, but to think about other ways of connecting with the community. Well, any other thoughts, any other things, questions about your own ministry, and your own outreach and missions, resources that you've picked up along the way that would be worth sharing with the group?
Jimmy, this is Paula.
Yeah.
We are having at 1:00 this afternoon a conference call sponsored by the United Way, where they have contacted all the faith leaders in the community to get online and talk about what's going on. I'll be interested to see what comes out of that conversation. I don't know if other communities are having similar conversations or not.
Yeah, definitely stay in touch with the United Way, the the GCM or things like that, and they definitely are going to be the people that can direct you to the most need in your neighborhood. Ray Balfour?
We had something like that, similar. We had a conversation like that, and one thing that came out from the United Way and some other people was telling us who is employing people right now, so that when I get sort of the calls from people who are homeless or just not members of the parish but looking for resources, so ask that question, Paula. Like, we learned that Walmart is hiring on the spot because they have so much coming in that they need stockers for the shelves, that kind of stuff. And I mean, I think there's some people that are pretty desperate right now and willing to do whatever they need to do. So that was helpful to me. When people call, I can say the shelter's not full, the Walmart is hiring, that kind of thing. Because, I put that banner out and I'm getting a lot of phone calls of how we can help, and I want to have information to respond. So
yeah, really good.
When you talk to them.
Really good idea. All right, y'all. Alan, anything else? All right. Well, thanks. We intend to at least offer these every other Wednesday for the time being, as they're useful and helpful for our diocese to gather. Obviously, our needs and questions and our response to our communities in terms of outreach changes daily, almost, it seems, at least. And so know that this will continue to be a resource that we'll at least offer as it's helpful to our diocese. With that said, unless there's anything else, we'll sign off, and we'll be sending out information. Know that this conversation will be stored on our website and the COVID-19 resource page. Dorian? Oh, you went off mute. I thought maybe you were.
Goodbye.
Okay. All right. Well, bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank y'all.